Alright my friends, welcome to another video lesson. In this lesson we're going to be discussing how to create a simple lower third to identify our interview subject with his name and his title. So you can see over here in the project panel I'm on version 7 of the interview now. We're in the final stretch here with the interview where we're going to be doing things like the text work, the final sound mixing, and the color correction. And right now we're going to be focusing on that text. So let's take a look at what I did here before we break down how I did it. And you can see I've got our interview subject's name in all caps and then his last name in lowercase, just to kind of break it up and provide some separation between the two parts of his name. And then I've got a thinner form of the same font I used up here. This is Avenir Next, by the way. And I've got his title down here in that thinner form and all caps with a vertical line breaking up the two parts of his title, B-Boy and Breakdancer. So, how did I do this? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to take my work that I've done here and just delete it. Gone. Now we'll rebuild it. One of the things I want to do before I get started on this is actually change the frame size of the video here. You can see in the close-up shot, it fills all the way to the edge of the frame. And then in the wide shot here, we've got these black bars on the top and the bottom. And this is because of a difference in frame size between the two cameras that were used. They're both 4K, but they're two different kinds of 4K. We've got regular UHD, which is 3840 by 2160. And then we've got DCI 4K at 4096 by 2160. So because that second frame size is a little bit larger, when we did our set to frame size in the earlier lesson, Premiere set it to the edges, the right and left edges of the frame and not the top and bottom. So to fix that, what I'm going to do is click on one of the clips here and change the scale. I'm just going to raise it a little bit. So right now it's at almost 47. I'm going to make it 50, and you see it takes care of those black bars at the top and bottom. Now I don't want to go through my entire video and do this to every single clip. I'd rather just copy and paste this, and that's totally possible. So what I'm going to do is with the clip selected, right click on it and choose copy. And then I'm going to zoom to the length of my sequence, and I'm going to select all the rest of the clips downstream here, plus the first one, just holding down Shift. And then I'm going to right click and choose Paste Attributes. And I want to make sure the motion box is selected here because the scale control is within the motion area in the effect controls. I'm going to hit OK. And that same scaling will be applied to all of the other occurrences now, without having to select each one and make an individual adjustment to every clip. Pretty cool little trick. All right, so back to the lower third here. What we're going to do is use the type tool. It's the T over here on the tool panel, and the keyboard shortcut is, amazingly enough, T. All right, so once I do that, I get a different control. And you can see when I roll over our program monitor here, I have a text typing tool. So I'm just going to click onto the program monitor, and I get the ability to type as soon as I do that. And you can see down here in the timeline, a new piece of media has appeared, and this is a piece of graphical information here. It says graphic on it, okay? So with that selected, I'm going to click back into my field here, and I'm going to type our subject's name. So I'm going to go all caps on his first name and then lowercase on his last name. And then I'm going to return, and I'm going to type his title in all caps. B-Boy. And then I'm putting a space and hitting the vertical line, which is also the backslash key, just holding down Shift. Another space and Breakdancer. And now I'm going to click over onto my selection tool to change from the text editing mode here, which is indicated by this red box around the text. As long as that's there, I can select the text and make changes to it. as soon as I head over to the selection tool here, I actually get a sizing and motion box, which means that I can actually grab onto this and move it around, okay? So how do I know where to place this? Well, number one, we want it to be on the opposite side of the screen as our subject. That looks inherently better because it's balanced that way. He's on one side, his lower third is on the other. Now, another concern I have is that the text is inside title safe. And I want to head over to my wrench here in the program panel, click on that and choose safe margins to make sure that I get that text located inside that inside line, the title safe line. The outside line, that's action safe, and that's not what we're concerned with when it comes to text. All right, so what I want to do here is change the weight of the text on the top portion, his name, to help set it apart from his title. So I'm going to double click in here, get back into editing mode, select his name, and making sure the graphic is selected here, heading over to my effect controls and twirling down the text control area here. Now you can see this is where I chose my font, Avenir Next. Hit the down arrow, there's a ton of fonts in here, and there are different expressions of the Avenir Next font. If I click on the down arrow here where it says regular, I have a whole bunch of different weights of it. Italic, medium, medium italic, demi-bold, and I'm going to go with bold. And then what I'm going to do is select his title here and make it smaller. Now to change the size of the font, I have a slider here for that. So I'm going to reduce the size of the font so that it kind of fits right there with his name. I like that. Now I'm going to head back over to my selection tool here and replace my lower third here. Well, I don't like the fact that his name is a little bit over his arm here, so I'm going to make another adjustment here by grabbing onto the end of the box and resizing everything simultaneously. Pretty cool. Now I'll move that over here. I don't want it to be all the way at the bottom. I want it to be a little bit raised because I think that looks a little bit better in this case. And now that I'm sure I'm inside title safe, I don't need that guide anymore, so I'll turn off safe margins. Now I'm going to click back into the timeline here and look at it by itself. I like where this is. I like the size that it is. It looks really nice. So now I'm concerned about when it actually appears. So we're coming from the beginning of our first soundbite here. We've got the B-roll that's here, and then our subject appears on screen utilizing a J-cut. So then once we cut to the wide shot, I need to decide exactly where this should appear. So I'm going to move this out of the way for now and kind of see what feels natural to me. Let's play.
Was at a high school pep rally. I saw someone do a backflip and I'm like, I thought that had to be done with wires in Hollywood. And realizing that it could be done.
I think I'm going to go with when he says with wires.
It had to be done with wires.
With wires, right there. When he kind of jogs his head to screen left a little bit. I think that's where I'm going to align the lower third. Let's check that out and see how that comes in.
I thought that had to be done with wires in Hollywood.
It's almost like him saying the word wires brings it in. I think I'm going to walk it over just a couple more frames here with the clip selected. I'm going to hold down Command and hit my left arrow a couple of times. And then I'm actually going to have it fade in and out. So with the clip selected, I'm going to hit Shift D to bring in my default video transition, which is a 1 second dissolve. So let's see how that looks.
Like, I thought that had to be done with wires in Hollywood. And realizing that it could be done by a high school.
Very nice. That looks really natural, looks really good. It's easily readable. And that's another consideration when you're thinking about where to place your lower third and how to do it. If you have a nice, simple background like we have here that isn't too bright or complicated, it's easy to do just text alone without some sort of background behind it. And one other thing I'd like to make you guys aware of related to the text here and how it appears over the background. Let me click on the graphic itself here, go up to the effect controls here, and under text you can see In addition to all the other controls I already talked about, we've got this appearance panel here with fill, stroke, background, and shadow. Fill is actually the color of the text itself. So if I click on that, I'll get a color picker here, and I could change the color of the text to, say, red if I wanted to. Boom, there it is. We're not going to do that because it looks awful. And then the other thing I've done here is I've utilized shadow, which is a drop shadow. You can see around the edges of, particularly the bigger letters, but all the letters have it, there's a slight little shadow, and that helps this text to stand out from the background even more. So by default, the shadow is usually a gray color. It's usually somewhere around in here, which doesn't really have that much of an effect on the text. So I'll usually click in there and change that to a nice, deep, rich black, and make sure it's activated over here with the checkbox. And then you have a number of controls here to manipulate how that shadow looks, how dark it is here, the opacity of it. I usually go around between 75 and 85%, something like that. And then let's zoom in a little bit here. Make it a little bit easier to see what we're doing with this text. Now you can really see the shadow here. If I turn it on and off, you can see how much of an effect that's having to set that text apart from the background. So we've got that opacity, and then the distance from the letters themselves. I don't usually make it too far because it starts to look really funky when you do that. So I like it to be fairly close to the letters, something like that. And then there's the spread here, which is how big that shadow is around each of the letters. I don't usually use that much. I'm going with 0 on that today. And then the softness of it, how sharp that shadow is. As I reduce that, you can see the shadow has a nice, crisp, sharp edge to it, which a lot of the time can actually be distracting. So I like to soften it so that it kind of fades off of the letters just a little bit. I'm going to go with about 30 on this. And there you have it, a nice, soft shadow that helps to set that text apart from the background. I'm going to go back to my fit view here, and that's something I want you guys to consider using on your text as well. I'm a big fan of simple lower thirds. The less involved, the better, and this is a great example of that right here. So again, we used the type tool to create a new graphic clip here, and then manipulated the controls using the effect controls and bounced back and forth between the type tool, which enabled us to change individual pieces of the type here, and then the selection tool, which allowed us to grab all the text, move it around, and actually do some resizing with it. Then we determined a good location to actually bring that lower third in here towards the beginning of the sequence, because we want to let people know who our subject is fairly early on in the interview. And then we chose an area where there was plenty of time between B-roll coverage, so we could easily have our lower third on screen with our subject. What I don't want to see you guys do is put that lower third up over B-roll. It should only be on screen accompanying the subject, and it should be on a single shot. It really doesn't look good when you put the lower third over two different angles. So if I drag it over here and we have this on screen going from the close-up to the wide,
I thought that had to be done with.
It looks kind of weird. So please don't do that. Keep it on one framing of the subject. Now the length of this, if I select it and use my / key, you can see it's just under 5 seconds here, which is a great length of time. It gives your viewer plenty of time to read the subject's name and their title, absorb what that is before it fades out. All right, my friends. That's creating a simple lower third with the type tool in Premiere. And that does it for this video lesson. I'll see you again in the next one.